the transmission construction. And they're anticipated to start this spring, going into the summer as well as the fall. It would take them approximately 2.5 years to complete the construction on the 10 miles of the transmission line. So it's not actually just only going through this area, it's 10 miles throughout the city. And what they would do is, what we're working with them on is coming up with a finalized schedule. What they will do is work in 300 to 500 feet work zones, and it can be staged with multiple crews working at a time in a particular area. So the construction, the transmission line will start in northwest, like Eastern Avenue in New Hampshire. So you could see just along New Hampshire from that area, from Eastern all the way down to Georgia, maybe 3 crews, and then, working on First Street, you might encounter 2 crews. So it'll be staggered, and we just don't have that detailed schedule. They provided to us a preliminary schedule, but there are some things that they're currently changing at this point in time, and we'll have a better sense of that shortly.
Any other questions?
This involves opening up the streets
It
and
does.
trenching.
It does. So with the transmission line itself, we will have to take up about 1 lane of traffic in order to do that. And in certain elevations, the crews will be digging as far as 15 to 20 feet deep, just depending on where they are. And in certain areas, they will not jackhammer. They will have to actually hand dig across certain intersections, which does add a length of time to that. Perfect example on Gresham Place in Northwest, Ward 1. They will be actually hand digging on the entire street, and they'll be there for about a year. So when I say the 10 miles, it will take about 2.5 years. It includes those extended times we'll have to hand dig in certain areas. Yes, ma'am.
George, could you refresh my memory about the public art on the Mount Vernon substation? Is that going to be a competition? Is that going to be handled by the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities? Or are you guys doing that in-house? How's that happening?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you did bring that up, because we have been engaging the Walker Jones Education Campus, had several meetings with the principal as well as administration there. And we're going to be collaborating with the school on what that art looks like. We're talking to they have several programs where they have students that actually create art, and we're collaborating with the school on that. So I don't have a specific answer as far as what the process is. We're working with that collaboratively with the school.
Well, I mean, you've got some pretty large proposed installations there, and an ornamental fence. I mean, so there's obviously professional artists that are going to be needed there.
Yes, some professional artists as far as with the decorative fence. So the fence that we'll have, that will be something that's not associated with the school itself. That will be something that's professionally done. But in terms of like the art, where it's located, how much art we'll get from the school, we're still talking with them about that. But we have agreed to collaborate with the school on that. And there was a specific ask out of a meeting, and we don't have a problem with that.
Still, we're hoping the community gets the opportunity to weigh in on that too. I mean,
Okay.
Children's artwork obviously can be very attractive, but it's something that the community's going to live with for a very long time. We don't want something that's going to end up seeming dated.
Okay. Yes, we'll have to work with you as well, and the community as well at large.
Okay, we have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
In looking at the site map, just to confirm, it looks like the bottom left-hand corner of the city block is empty. Is that part of your property, or is that a different property?
Yeah, so the property that you're looking at, that's actually on the map, that's the corner of First and K Street, and that is currently Pepco's property. That's where the substation will be located once we start construction.
Okay, so then what's the green building? I'm looking at that set, the bottom left-hand corner. there's
Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, you're looking at this right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what this is showing you is the actual area where the First and K Street, and in this block, what you see in green is the footprint of the proposed substation.
Okay, so your property does not extend to the bottom left-hand corner where there's no building? Basically, New Jersey and K.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not, no.
I
part
can
of
see
this
where the
is-
building is, I didn't know if your
No,
property
part
was
of this
safe to that.
is, Pepco's property. What was located there was a nonprofit, DC Greens, and they were actually located there, and we allowed them to stay, in that space, but they are gonna be relocated this spring. So this is still part of Pepco's property, but what you're showing right here, this green, is where the substation will be located within that property line.
Right, yeah, I'm more interested in the balance of your property and what the plans are for that.
Mhm.
The neighborhood already has quite a lack of green space, and the garden did provide some of that, some respite from buildings, and I was curious what the plan is for that area of the city block.
Right, and at this time, we currently don't have any plans finalized as far as, what this will be. The only thing that we're focused on at this point in time is the actual, building of the substation. And I know that that is, something that people have asked about, and we'll have to follow with you once we have detailed plans on that. But what I will say is that, although there's not a substation there now, it's empty. What you will see is some activity from the contractors, starting as early as this month, where they will be housing some of the equipment there, so that they're not putting that equipment throughout other parts of the city. So it'll be materials, equipment. It's not the substation construction, it's only a housing location for the, construction of the transmission line. So just wanted you all to be aware of that. So far, we've gone to Golden Plaza Apartments, Golden Rule Apartments, Serrano K, and you'll continue to see us, do outreach and let folks know, as far as when the construction will start.
A question, I'd like to follow up on the question with respect to the art. Even though you're gonna work with the elementary school, I think that's a great idea. Would you consider engaging the arts and humanities as a collaborative kind of process, since Pepco's not in the art business? And that they represent the city in terms of trying to look at a holistic approach, possibly involving them in the project. That way they might be able to provide some guidance
Yeah.
to the elementary schools, so that we come out with something that meets everybody's needs and expectations.
And that's a good idea, we're definitely open to that, for sure, yeah.
How many pieces of art does the apartments build?
You know what, that we have not made a final determination on. What we've shown in the renderings is where we can actually place art on the building, but in terms of like, what the art will look like, how big is it, that sort of thing, we haven't had any discussion on. We haven't brought a contract on board at this point in time to sort of finalize those plans, and I think at that point in time, that's when we'll start like really, ironing out, the specifics on that.
Well, I hope
We haven't
you do
had-
hear what Commissioner Rapadro has stated in the Young Men in the Classes.
Right.
Because, as you say, you don't want art to be dated in a couple of years.
Right.
And maybe give them 1 or 2 canvases rather than, if you're gonna put up 8 pieces of art, and just pull the number. I don't know if you want art from high school level students, not that they don't do good work.
Right.
But I think they make some good points, and I hope you are hearing that.
Oh, no, definitely, and, again, take that feedback back to the project team.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Deborah.
So, thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you all.
coming. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you.
All right, so next we have the DC Office of Lottery and Gaming, if they want to come up. So this is kind of like just some pre-discussion before we take the vote on if we want to support sports wagering in Shaw's Tavern and Silo. So I have my folk, just you?
Yeah.
I'll talk.
We have 2 more
Okay.
representatives.
Come on up.
We'll all chime in. Good evening, NNC, thank you for having us here
And you
today.
want to say your name?
Luis Rendon, with the Office of Lottery and Gaming. I'm an investigation enforcement officer. Thank you for having us. As you all know, sports wagering is now legal in DC. It's a big uptake, and we're happy to have this as part of the district. As a form of background, so you guys are informed, the OLG, or Office of Lottery and Gaming, is a regulatory body over all licensed gaming in the District of Columbia, including lottery, charitable gaming, and sports wagering. On December 18th, 2018, the DC City Council approved the Sports Wagering Lottery Amendment Act of 2018, which legalized sports betting in the district and designated the DC Lottery to regulate sports betting activities here in DC. The OLG proposed sports wagering regulations on June 24th, 2019, and adopted final regulations on August 30th, 2019. the official licensing process for applicants to go in the online portal opened up December 3rd, 2019, so it's just a brief period ago. The OLG regulates privately operated sports wagering throughout the district, licensing and monitoring these operations and their gaming-related suppliers for all compliance with applicable district and federal laws. Obtaining a sports wagering license is very complex. It's not like any business could just go in and say, hey, I want to have patrons come in here and gamble and wage on sports. It's not like that. We do an in-depth and complex background investigation on the entity itself and in the individuals who are putting in for these licenses. We go through in-depth financial suitability investigation to make sure they're able to pay out their potential losses. The OLG's newly established compliance and enforcement team, that'll be me, I'm a prior law enforcement agent with the federal government, will regularly and proactively monitor the business operations for all sports wagering operations, to include anti-money laundering regulations. Business looking to obtain a sports wagering license must meet strict security and surveillance plans that will be submitted for the OLG, and we have to approve those security and surveillance plans prior to them operating. And also, they have to have a designated security on staff to monitor the location. The OLG is committed to working with our DC regulatory and law enforcement partners such as ABRA and Metropolitan Police Department in efforts to continue to put the community first while ensuring public safety. I know there's a lot of questions that you guys may have. I know you have representatives here from Shaw Tavern and such, but just know that it's not going to be a Vegas style setting. So if you have any questions.
So should you go over like the procedure though? Like, I'll say, I'm going into Shaw's Tavern, and then what happens? And I want to place a bet, so what's happening with the
So
phone and
Shaw
all
Tavern
this?
first, there's a lengthy license process that Shaw Tavern has to
So
go
let's
through.
talk about the procedure though, not specific about.
So there's two options for sports betting in the district. There's gonna be a mobile application process, and there's gonna be a kiosk. And that's all based on what Shaw's owners want. Now, when they want a mobile application, they're gonna have to, what we call a management service provider or a sports book, to make sure they have that app within their location. That application is confined to that brick and mortar. You cannot go outside and bet, so you're confined within Shaw's
So
Tavern
I'm
to
taking
only
my
bet.
phone in.
So you're taking your phone in, and once you walk into the establishment, Shaw's Tavern has William Hill, who's a big sports book, run their sports book. They're able to place their bets in the location, and that's it. And if they want, William Hill, who will manage sports book around the city, will or can potentially put kiosks in that location. It's all up to the owners on what they want to do as part of their sports book in the set location. And from questions and inquiries that we've been getting from potential applicants, because right now we have no applications in from restaurants or businesses in the district. And everything is public and it's online. We have an online website for questions and answers. But basically, you could go in to Shaw's Tavern if they're licensed, and you could place your bet on the phone inside the brick and mortar.
Okay, but I don't understand, so I'm gonna have the app on my phone that I've downloaded myself, right?
Yep.
And then, but what if I leave any establishment, what happens to me
Right,
after?
so the establishment, Shaw's Tavern, we're talking about Shaw's Tavern, or any
Any
applicant
okay.
that has a license will have to geo-fence that establishment. Through whatever, there's several companies that are authorized throughout the OLG to provide the services. And basically, they're confined with that location. It's all techie. So
Okay.
you walk out of the location and your service stops.
So you sure, because like, I live close to Shiloh, right? So maybe I want to
Okay.
go place a bet whenever the next big fight comes.
Mhm.
And if I head towards K Street, then when will it stop? Like,
It'll
once I
stop
reach
at,
the door?
yep,
Or?
at that location. And that's part of the compliance process for the OLG. We gotta make sure that their geofencing, what we call, is compliant with the OLG. So once you step out of the establishment, that service has to be cut off.
Who checks that though?
So we do, the OLG does.
So we
With
check that
their-
from day one?
Yes, that's prior, so everything is done prior to commencing operations. So we get their operational plans, we check that to make sure it's compliant, then we issue a license. We don't issue a license without everything being sent in first and approved by our executive director.
What's the significance behind having you know, the geofence at a particular restaurant or bar or any building for that reason,
Mm-hmm.
why not just have an app so I could make such a wager on the sidewalk or anywhere else?
So, you probably might have heard the DC Lottery is gonna become a license or an operator here in the district too. So that's gonna prevent that location from having interference with a potential DC Lottery, sports wagering app.
What do you mean by interference?
So basically, you're confined to that location for that sports book. So you're not gonna bleed into another zone. And when the DC Lottery app becomes activated, the DC Lottery app will not bleed into that zone. So you're basically drawing a line from the wagers.
Sure, so, right, but what I don't understand is like certainly, you know, your phones are capable of operating 2 applications at the same time. And if you have one application and you're placing a wager at the DC Lottery and another application that I could.
Once you step
place-
into a
Yeah, once I
location.
step in there. What's the significance of those 2 applications not being able to run simultaneously while in the establishment or outside of it?
So that's part of the operation plans that we're gonna receive from the actual operator, from the establishment, and we're gonna go ahead and test that to make sure it doesn't bleed out.
Well, that's fine, and that makes sense, but I don't understand the policy behind making sure that you, like, why one has to be in one location and why one has to be in the
Well,
other.
it's the operators who are gonna make that money, right? So you want your sports book who is running through the William Hills of the world or the Caesars of the world versus DC Lottery who's running an independent system. So it becomes your
So
business.
this is just a way of kind of
Yes,
helping
it's
out
fi-
businesses?
Yeah, and this is,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
So we're gonna have the commissioners go first.
okay, yes, sir.
So, a couple of questions. So my understanding is that the involvement of ABRA is in providing an endorsement
Yes, sir.
that allows the ABC licensed establishment to offer this form of entertainment.
Mhm.
But you had mentioned the geofencing. I know that in the presentation that was made by counsel for one of the applicants that we're hearing tonight, that they envision actually having the sports betting take place on their summer garden, in other words, their outdoor cafe. So you mentioned cutting it off, you know, when you step out the door.
Yeah.
So are these licensees going to be allowed to actually have, you know, that geofence extend to?
So it depends what constitutes
space?
their space, their privately
So,
held
but,
space.
you know, I
right?
just wanted to clarify,
Yep.
because you
Yeah. So,
seem
yeah,
to
so
have been
it's-
very
yeah.
rigid about walking out the door.
Yeah.
So if you can walk out the door, but you're still in the establishing space, then that is still within the licensed area.
Yes, and so, like, you have some certain cafes, like you said here, and, you know, a lot of sports bars have a little outdoor area, so you have that access area. Again, we're gonna test all this out prior to commencing the sports operations or licensing, sports operator, so, that's part of our compliance process. So it's, again, it's a lot to take on because it's new to the city, it's exciting to the city, but it's a lot of work on our behalf to actually test and evaluate what's coming our way. And it's our job to ensure that everybody's in compliance specifically to the geolocate.
So you mentioned the security and the surveillance plans. So I guess I'm at a loss to understand if the establishment is only going to be offering the mobile-based applications rather than the kiosks. You know, what security concerns are entailed by this potential operation?
Yeah, so sometimes, you know, you may have patrons, and again, most, like in bars, for example, people are drinking, there might be customers' complaints. So if there is a customer complaint about, you know, wagers not being paid out or their mobile application failing and they want to bet, we want to capture that out on video to work with ABRA, to work with Metropolitan PD so that we could answer those complaints.
So when you talk about security, you're talking about additional physical, you know, security? Is that going to be a requirement in the plans?
Yeah, we're talking about physical security, cameras, recording. You have to maintain footage for a certain amount of time, but also having a person that's in charge of the mobile application who's able to answer questions for the establishment. So somebody who's trained in the app, somebody who's able to answer patrons' concerns. Hey, I won X amount of money, how do I get a payout? And so forth. So what we've been hearing so far is that everything's going to be on your virtual wallet. Locations don't really want to have cash on hand because that creates crime, that creates opportunity. So a lot of these places want to just have, you know, create your account, you win, you get a payout, it goes directly to your bank account. A lot of places don't want that liability.
So just as, Abra has requirements for certified beverage managers being on site at all times, there's going to be a comparable requirement by your agency that there be a manager for that activity?
Yes, we're
whenever
specific
it is
for
being offered.
sports wagering, yep, on site, and you have to have all the postages, just like Abra has, as far as you have your underage gambling, you have your responsible gaming program numbers on there, so that if somebody does have a problem with gambling, you have a number and a hotline with the OLG's information. You're gonna have the manager on duty postings, so just like Abra has, we're also gonna have our own postings, and that's part of the regulations that have been set forth.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, so when you say, operators, could an operator choose to make payouts at their establishment?
They can, and that's something that's gonna be put forth again in their operational plans to the district. And that has to be all approved, verified, inspected by the compliance and enforcement team prior to them operating.
Okay, and so I apologize if you went through this before. Just quickly, the phases, ANC is going to take a vote on these kind of license, it'll go to Abra, Abra will make a recommendation to you that this operator should, have this endorsement on their license. And at that point, then you will, do your due diligence and checking the
Yeah, so
establishment.
again,
and then-
so an Abra endorsement is just an endorsement, doesn't mean that they're licensed.
Right.
So, any establishment in the district that wants to engage in sports wagering has to
Has to
come
go
through the
through you.
OLG.
Yeah.
And it's a long process. You're doing financial suitability to make sure everybody is capable of paying out. You're doing background checks on all the individuals. You're doing, all your financials like taxes, your bank statements, then your operational component, which goes to your security plans, making sure they're in compliance. They have the cameras on hand. They have the manager on duty. So it's really two aspects to licensing an operator. And aside from that, you have to comply with the DSLBD requirements for the district to actually hire out 35% through CBE. So it's a lot for an operator to take on or an establishment, so it is a lengthy and complex process.
So the applications that are going to be filed with your agency are subsequent to the endorsement approval by Abra? Is that the cycle?
Yes.
Sequence?
Yes, so
And then,
basically-
so then your applications are also subject to ANC recommendations?
They are not.
They are not?
The
Interesting.
Abra endorsement is.
Right, so,
Yes, this
so
is-
there isn't, so the ANC does not
Right.
play any role in,
No.
in reviewing those security plans, surveillance plans, et
Correct.
cetera, unless we required it of the applicant in advance of their
Correct.
submission.
Mhm. That can be a factor, yes, because you have to submit all those requirements to Abra.
Go ahead.
What is the cost for the license? And will DC Lottery use a percentage of revenue received from the cost of the license to do something in community?
That's a great question. So for a Class A operator, that means all the four major facilities or stadiums in the district. You have your Capital One Arena, your National Stadium, your Audi Field, and St. Elizabeth Complex. $500,000 for a Class A operator license, and that's renewed every 5 years. Class Bs for your Shaw Taverns, for your small pubs, bars, restaurants, that's $100,000, and that's also renewed every 5 years. And those are the two major operator licenses that we have, and the city will collect 10% of your gross revenue.
Right, but what will DC Lottery do with a portion of the revenue?
Oh, this goes on to-
give back to
Yeah, so this goes out to the,
various communities
yeah, this goes
like
out to the
Shaw,
general,
Detroit,
this goes out to the general fund for DC.
and the district will decide?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, to the general fund.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I want to put this in layman's language so I understand. I go out and it's LSU, Alabama. I go out and I want to bet on the game. So I can go to DC Lottery and I can put a bet in on my app.
Yep.
Then I can walk into your tavern, or a tavern that's under your group, and I can put a second bet in on my app. Okay, is there two questions. One, is there a maximum amount of money I can bet through these two apps? And then the second question is, let's say I get a bad record with you, does DC Lottery find that out so that y'all recognize I've got a gambling
Oh,
problem?
yes.
or-
We have
or-
a strict responsible gaming program. And yeah, that's a good question. If you want to self-exclude from gambling, we do have a process for that. And everything's online. So problem gaming is huge, right? It's one of the biggest things, the problems here in America. So there is a process for you to self-exclude from gambling. And again, that could be addressed online, all the questions. We have a website, we have a process and policies in place to inform patrons of issues or questions they may have.
But you didn't say about the limit.
So there's no threshold. Each operator sets their limits. Each
But
operator
you
sets their
indicated
limits.
that the establishment, they basically are a franchise of a larger gambling establishment, right? So the individual operator sets the limit, or the larger gambling, Caesars sets the limit at what that bar can take in as a bet.
So is the operator, whoever the operator is for that license, sets the limit. Yeah, and that could be, it depends on how much you're gonna bring in. You gotta, again, it's a business, so you gotta measure what you're willing, what's your liability, right? How much Shaw Tavern is producing. And so that operator is gonna say, hey, I'm producing, $500,000 a year. I'm only putting my betting cap to a $25,000 payout. So it all depends on the operator, and again, it's all
So
financial.
then the ability to, excuse me for interrupting, the ability for me to get paid back is a function of that operator,
Yes, sir.
not Caesars.
Nope, is on the operator, correct. So again, we go back to William Hill, because they're a world-known sports book. You're playing on a William Hill app, Shaw Tavern, they take all the risk for your payout. So William Hill will pay you out. Whoever's running that sports book will pay you out. And you'll have that on your application if you walk into a location. So there's DraftKings is a popular one, William Hill is another one. So they'll operate.
So to clarify, can you repeat that? So the house, so to speak, is not the bar or tavern, it's actually the operator.
The operator, whoever's licensed, whoever the license.
That's what I'm saying, I'm betting Caesars, I'm not betting Shaw, I'm just betting
Oh,
at
yep,
Shaw
yep.
with Caesars.
Yep. Yeah, Caesar's, so Shaw Tavern is the establishment, right?
I see what you're saying, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
so it's the William Hills of the world, it's the Caesars of the world, the DraftKings of the world will be doing the payout, not Shaw's Tavern. Shaw's Tavern.
Can you have a question?
Yeah.
You guys have a question?
I was just gonna.
I mean, unless Shaw Tavern wasn't an operator,
Shaw's
but most
inside.
businesses don't have the expertise to run a sports book, so they subcontract it out to a big sports book.
Who else
Right?
got a question from the audience? Anyone else? Any more questions from the commissioners?
So Tavern will get their cut from Caesars.
It all depends, so that's something that they work out, it's a business deal. So if Shaw Tavern wants to lease out their space to Caesars or William Hill, then that's the lease agreement they're gonna go into. If Shaw Tavern now has something to do with the handle or the sports book themselves, then they have to become a licensed operator. Right, so if you touch the sports book in any way, shape, or form, you now become part of the sports book and you become an operator and you have to be licensed. If you enter into a lease agreement with an operator, that's a different story. Again, and if you have any further questions, oh, sorry.
One question. Is this betting establishment, right, and does it have anything to do with MGM and Live
No, sir.
Casino?
No, sir.
So y'all not
this-
gonna hook into the
This is
casino?
totally independent. This is sports wager in the district. There's no casinos in the district. And so it's a unique opportunity. We're the only jurisdiction in the United States who is allowing privately operated businesses to engage in sports.
Right, but the operator can be MGM. it
Yes,
could
they
be.
could, yes, they could.
Okay, so
yes,
yeah, I think that, all right, and
So that-
just to kind of get back to what I was saying with these licenses, it's the establishment that comes to ANC for their endorsement to ABRA, then the ABRA goes to you guys, that's the establishment.
That's the establishment
The
for ABRA.
operator, they're the ones that are gonna be paying,
Solicit the license from the OLG and pay the fee.
pay the $500, $100K fee.
$500K, right.
The only difference in this policy structure is you're inserting a bar or a restaurant, so you know, not necessarily they have to, I mean, this could be done outside of them, but this is a way of like kind of helping local
Right, it's
businesses.
exactly what this is,
It's
entertainment.
CBE participation.
Yes, sir, exactly what it
So,
is.
so basically, what's happening is the big sports books are coming in town,
Yeah.
they're doing gambling, they gotta have 35% CBE, so they give a local bar
Yes, sir,
a
exactly.
license to
35%.
be a venue, and that achieves their CBE requirement.
Yes, sir. But you gotta have that in place before you actually get licensed, so that CBE is a requirement.
So how many of, say, we have like more of these come before us, are all these gonna be granted license, or what's the percentage?
So right now, like I said, we opened the online application portal December 3rd, and we have not received a completed application.
But could, if they do it, could technically, are you gonna have like a limit, like what if like all the restaurants on King Street?
I highly doubt it, because again, the application process is so complex and you have to meet that financial suitability background. And a lot of, well, from what we've seen is a lot of locations don't want to take that liability. They don't have the financial assets to take on that liability.
So again, to clarify, the operators have to apply to your agency to get a license to offer that service in the district.
Yes, sir.
And then the relationship between the operator and the establishment is in some cases a lease.
In some cases, and that could be, so we've had some meetings with some potential applicants to walk them through the process and to guide. We're offering amazing customer support in our opinion. You know, businesses don't just wanna just ask, you know, is this beneficial to me, or what's the process? We're answering all questions, and we're an open book at the OLG, and we'll continue to do that. We get phone calls and emails every day, and we're just fostering customer care. Again, communities first, and we're trying to just make sure that it benefits, you know, the district and the patrons, and it becomes good entertainment for the district. Not like Vegas, but I think it's gonna be a good venture for the district.
So again, to clarify, the establishment and the operator are both filing applications with your agency? Or only the operator is filing an application with your agency?
Depends who wants to
Okay,
take
so-
the responsibility.
So in the event that there's a lease arrangement between the operator and the establishment, the only party that's coming to your agency is the operator?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then so it's the establishment that's getting just an endorsement from ABRA that says, operator, you can come here and do business?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right.
Okay,
No,
so
no,
she's
no,
gonna,
establishment.
Tracy's gonna clarify here.